Hi everybody, I'm Leo Bridgewater and welcome to Strange Bedfellows. I'm along here with my guest host, Scott Rudder of the New Jersey Cannabisness Association, and we're here to talk about all things cannabis in New Jersey. Scott, thanks for coming out.
Leo, thanks for having me, man. Really appreciate it.
What do you think about what happened last night?
I don't know. Wow. I got to tell you, it's a historic victory. I mean, there's a lot of great things going on in New Jersey in general. I think from a cannabis industry perspective, the Phil Murphy victory is going to be very positive. We're going to see things that people have been looking for, right? So people have been looking for an expansion of medical. People have been looking for civil justice reform, and people have been looking for an industry to be created for both jobs, entrepreneurship, and expansion in other areas. So it was a historic victory, to say the least.
I've been sitting here trying to surmise what last night's victory really meant. And to me, it was the culmination of a few years of hard work and advocating for the legalization, adult use of cannabis. Having got PTSD added to the New Jersey State Medical Marijuana
Which you
program.
are a huge part of making that happen.
I appreciate, it was definitely one of the highest honors to be able to participate in getting that legalized, being that as a country, we are now at 22 veteran suicides a day. And so once PTSD was added to the New Jersey Medical Marijuana Program as a qualifying condition, and then naturally seeing the state make the evolution into the adult use side, it was a responsibility to make that natural evolution with the state.
I think so, and it's guys like Ken Walsky from the Coalition of Medical Marijuana, guys like yourself, who have led this effort for many, many years. And now we're starting to see the more states that have come online on the medical cannabis side, right? We're seeing very positive things happen. We're seeing opioid reduction, not just the use, but the overdoses. And we're seeing also in lots of these places that, cannabis has become the off-ramp to opioid abuse and addiction. The natural progression, once we've come to understand the science behind the plant, people get more comfortable on the adult use side because they kind of view this as, sure it's a medication, and sure it's an alternative to not just opioids but to alcohol. It's just a healthier way to either medicate or recreate. And I think that starting out in California in the 1990s all the way up through today, we now have studies to look back on. We have analysis to look back on. We also have other countries' own research. The Israelis, the Canadians, the Germans. They've all been doing significant research into cannabis, and we're discovering that it's a drug, and there's things we need to be concerned about. Certainly, you don't want teenage use, and certainly people shouldn't smoke and drive and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's significantly healthier than alcohol, opioids, and cough syrup for you even.
I liken where we are as a state to more so what we're, facilitating is a cultural shift in how we view cannabis. To include just the words that we use. Instead of marijuana, we all know that's not a socially acceptable word. We don't
it's a common word.
It is. It's like the same thing with the Washington Redskins. It's common. It's common. It's been, but it still makes it a bad word, particularly when you look at its roots. But we're also talking about the catching up of the research, because as you stated, Israel, they've been doing this for 50 years. And so as a country, we are a little late to this conversation.
Very late.
And so
on purpose.
Yes, and that was by design. And so a good friend of ours, Marvin Washington, once said, "We are the most unorganized truth against an organized lie." And
that's very profound.
That
very
was brilliant.
True. You think about how hard it's been, right? I mean, this is hard, right? So just to getting as far as we are here in 2017, it was 80 years ago. 80 years ago.
3 weeks ago.
3 weeks ago.
Where
We had it was when the Stamp Act was passed, when cannabis first became illegal. You know, prior to then, we had cannabis in our medicine cabinets. We had cannabis, cannabis oil. We used clothing. We made rope. You know, we had all different types of products that were being used by cannabis. And then, of course, we I don't want to get too far into the history of this, but there were major powers at play then. It was the timber industry, the newspaper industry, the chemical industry then. Fast forward to today, some of those guys are still players, but now it's the pharmaceutical industries that are trying to keep this down. So the cannabis world has had major billion-dollar companies and conglomerates trying to stifle it, and they've used their friends in Washington to perpetuate that. In 1969, when the original cannabis prohibition law was found to be unconstitutional, so we switched from an unconstitutional law, and then Richard Nixon is in, and that's when he started the war on drugs, right? So that's when the Controlled Substance Act was passed, and that's where we really started to see that this war on drugs take place, and they put cannabis. Here's some fun facts, right? They put cannabis as a Schedule I. They made sure that this is something that nobody should ever study, ever look at, because there's zero health value, and you're going to get addicted just by looking at it, right? So that's like the most awful things you could be.
And
Schedule
the reefer
I.
madness, bringing out that.
Oh yeah, the reefer madness, right? It kind of backs it all up because it was a movie, so it must be scientific, right?
You smoke some weed, and you're gonna go turn into a black man and rape white women.
Hey, you got to watch out for that. So, looking at you.
This will be edited.
But at the end of the day, what it really came down to is that the Nixon administration was going after war protesters. They're going after civil rights protesters. So your hippies and your Black Panthers, you would typically see cannabis being used in those environments. And so, hey, this is a method for us to infiltrate these two different groups, for the Nixon administration's gain. So they went in, and that's what they were doing, because they felt that the communists were coming in. They're going to infiltrate these different groups, so we could start to spy on them if we use cannabis as the method to get in those doors. There was never science behind it. There was never anything that said, that there's no medical background that says that this should be a Schedule I. And you know that. And you know that when you make when you make cocaine, crack cocaine is a Schedule II.
Yeah. So basically,
crystal meth is a Schedule II.
Yes.
Crystal meth and crack.
Heroin
is Schedule I.
Okay, so
where heroin's where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, it's equal.
But crack cocaine and crystal meth have greater medical values and are a lot less addictive, according to the federal government, than cannabis, which we all know not to be true.
So then, therefore, when you look at the involvement of veterans and them being useful tools, the
100%.
The general public tends to lean more towards the word of a veteran than a politician these days, considering the political and racial climate of the country.
Absolutely.
And so what veterans are, we don't have time for the oxymoronic politics, more towards
the oxycode.
The word of a veteran. Yes, but then and the thing is that they're passing the political pills out at the VA like it's candy, and that is real. Just like we're at 22 veteran suicides a day.
Right. That
is real, and half that number is the Vietnam veterans. They're still doing themselves. Right. It averages out to 5 a week here in New Jersey.
Fortunately now we have the American Legion, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the VFW.
Weed for Warriors Project.
There are significant and longstanding veteran organizations that are out there fighting for their members. For the
IAVA. Yep.
Yeah, IAVA.
IAVA.
They're testifying before Congress. They're putting press conferences together, issuing white papers. They know that their membership needs access to common sense medication. They know that returning vets who have significant injuries or PTSD need something other than oxycodone every time you have an issue. Every time you sneeze, here's another pill. These guys have become, these troops, these warriors who are fighting for us overseas have come back and are criminals now if they're trying to get access to cannabis in the view of the federal government. That is a crime in and of itself.
Mind you, all of this happening in the midst of an opioid abuse and addiction epidemic. So
today.
Today. And so
today, 150 people are going to die.
From 77,000 in a day, I think it is. Or
no. So you have about 20. You have about, and it's sad. whatever the number is. It's sad.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to have, it doesn't matter what it is.
The
But I will
number
tell
is
you-
too big anyway.
No, it's about 32,000, 35,000, but those are the numbers that are published. There's a lot of people that die from a drug overdose that don't get reported because the coroner doesn't have the sophistication to have it. The police, you know, the person that died as a result of overdose, there was something else involved, and those numbers are actually they're reduced numbers. They're not the actual numbers. The numbers probably could be significantly higher, but I will tell you this: there are more people die in an average year than people have died from the Gulf War I, 9/11. Iraq, Afghanistan, all the way through today. All the way through today. There are more people that die in 1 year of an overdose from opioids than we have done all these wars. And all these troops are asking for just a common sense opportunity, but the federal government will not allow it. And that, to me, is outrageous. There are people like Senator Cory Booker and others at the federal level, Republicans and Democrats, mind you. This has become more and more a bipartisan issue, which is one of the things you and I keep talking about, is finding that common ground on issues. We don't have a similar political background, but yet on this subject, we absolutely agree on. Absolutely agree on. And I think that's what makes this so important and an imperative for us.
Well, I remember getting the call to be a part of the rollout of Senator Cory Booker's Marijuana Justice Reform Act. And what the Marijuana Justice Reform Act is, they basically deschedules cannabis altogether, takes it completely off. From a social economic impact or a social justice impact, you know, we have a lot of people that are in jail for very minor, small offenses.
Ruining lives.
Yes. We're
lives.
talking college kids.
Right.
We're talking parents. We're talking, and the thing is that when you look at the way a lot of these people end up in jail, the impact isn't just on them, it's on their families too. So if someone got caught with a doobie, a small joint.
Thanks for translating. I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah. And if someone got caught with a small joint and they got caught on, you know, public housing property, then that kid's parents lose their public housing. And then, therefore, it's not just him that's going to jail, but now mom and dad and little brother got to leave the public housing area. See, this is again the whole oxymoronic part of it all.
Right.
And I think when you look at the involvement of veterans, you know, what we're saying is number one, before anyone gets out of the military, at least in the Army, we're educated on this stuff.
Right.
Now, once a soldier leaves active duty and goes into the general public and returns and becomes a veteran citizen, you know, now you're in the hands of the VA, who is not really updated on where we are when it comes to the cannabis space. But they will pass that fentanyl, that oxycodone, that Percocet out real quick.
There's more. It's always on the down low, but there are more and more VA doctors who are off the record advising their patients, those soldiers, those airmen, those those Marine Corps guys. You may want to try this. I can't recommend it, but you may want to try it. And there's efforts afoot to change it to allow that to happen, and it always comes down to the same problem. We have senior leadership, whether it's the Trump administration, the Obama administration, the Bush administration, going all the way back, that for some reason, even though they know the science, even though we've had people in the previous administration that were positive towards, particularly on the civil justice side, you know, to loosen the rules up a little bit, but it always seems to come back to big pharma and the FDA.
Yes.
Because, you know, you cannot, you know, the VA cannot say with certainty that there's a medical value with cannabis. Why? Because the FDA didn't say so. Every doctor there, every nurse there, every medical professional in that building, and every patient can tell you with absolute certainty that there's medical value. But because the FDA did not say so, it can't be true.
Yes.
And that, to me, without the FDA saying so, why does the FDA hold back on doing research, allowing some research to occur? They allow some level. I can't say there is some level of research going on. But here's a fun fact about some of these things.
Preach, Scott. Preach.
And it's awful, actually. There's a company called Insys, INSYS, and they are a manufacturer of fentanyl, the deadliest. It is significantly more harmful than heroin. Significally more addictive.
They're under investigation now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So Insys, but this is really fun facts here. Incise, the manufacturer of the deadliest of the opioids that are out there, and it's deadlier than heroin.
Fentanyl.
Fentanyl.
Yeah, what killed Prince.
And Michael Jackson. Yes. So this Incise, this company called Incise, based in Arizona, spent $500,000 last year to defeat Arizona's public referendum to legalize cannabis. Incise, the manufacturer of fentanyl, spent $500,000 to defeat a legalization effort. Why? Did they do it because they have our public health in mind? Did they do it because they felt that it's for the good of the kids? Or did they do it because they know in every state that has legalized cannabis that the profit margins or the profit value on these opioid manufacturers go down?
Yep.
It goes down
Shrinking.
every time. It shrinks on average. 25% of opioid use goes down in states that have legalized cannabis. That's a fact.
Well, when you look at the science is now catching up to the time. The time is now catching up to the science, actually.
All right. Yes. Time is catching up.
Yes, it is, because we are now seeing it. States that have comprehensive medical marijuana programs are seeing a drop in the number of opioid abuse and addiction incidences.
Right.
They're also seeing They're seeing a drop in the number of scripts being written by doctors.
Right.
For opioids.
Right.
And so it's like...
Because they have options. They have choices. They have real choices.
So we are now at a point in time where you have more Vietnam veterans who have come home and committed suicide than actually died in the war. And we're talking over 58,000.
Right.
And I'm sure we passed that with OIF and OEF veterans,
right.
Such as myself, and
right.
Desert Storm and Desert Shield.
Right.
And so when you look at these numbers and you say, okay, wait a minute, cannabis is a Schedule 1, which has zero medicinal value, as you just said, but yet you have a New Jersey medical marijuana program. Huh?
Right.
So
and along those lines, another interesting thing that happened recently is that there was an appellate court in New Jersey that directed New Jersey to go look at your Schedule 1 again.
The Kudunsky case.
How can you have a law? How can you have a law that declares, and this is New Jersey law, so New Jersey mirrored the 1971 Controlled Substance Act, so they mirrored that. And basically, so we have our own Schedule 1 designation. So the appellate court said, I'm sorry, New Jersey, you have a medical marijuana program. Governor Christie, you have signed on 2 occasions, adding additional, including what you led with the PTSD, adding these other conditions to it. Therefore, you recognize at some level that there's a medical value, but Christie doesn't want to do that.
Are we talking about the same Chris Christie who's out telling everyone with the opioid commission that cannabis is a gateway drug?
Right.
So see, when you say gateway, you, as to the trained ear, such as ourselves, you just dated yourself, because we don't even talk that way no more. Those of us in the cannabis community don't say gateway drug. It's what year are you? Right.
Welcome to the conversation.
Yeah. Today's 2017. You do know that, right?
A great marketing campaign from the 1970s, 80s, and 90s through today has talked about the gateway drug, right?
Yes.
So Governor Christie recently cited a study that has no third-party valuation to it, but cited a study that said that you are, I think it was 2.5 times, I could be off a little bit, but 2.5 times more likely to use opioids if you ever tried marijuana, right? So, oh my gosh. Well, hold on a second.
2.5 times.
2.5 times. Calm down, sir. Calm down. That's very dangerous, right? If you use the same methodology and ask similar questions of the opioid abuser, have you ever tried an apple? Yes. I'm going to say that you probably have a greater likelihood of having used apples in your past if you're an opioid user, maybe toothpaste, orange juice, some other things. So the methodology which they use to determine on whether or not you use cannabis before, you can use anything else. You ever try coffee? You ever have a Red Bull? People who use opioids have used Red Bull in the past. We should ban Red Bull. I mean, it's the methodology is so off base, but it supports their conclusion.
Yes.
And their conclusion is very simple. We have our friends over here in Big Pharma. Big Pharma has providing us lots and lots of money over the years. Let's make sure that we don't offend our friends in Big Pharma. So while there's this opioid campaign going on, and honestly, all my criticisms aside, it's a very important campaign. We need to bring greater awareness. So whatever your motivation is, all bets are off. As long as your motivation is going to get to drive that home. But if you're going to have something, if you're going to talk about it, if you're going to give speeches on, Give people an alternative. You already recognize that there's a medical value. Why have you stifled the program? In his speech, in Governor Christie's speech, he bragged about stifling the medical marijuana program,
of which he's been signing,
which he
adding
is some level of
qualified
support on.
conditions.
Because look, here's what happened in 2013. Megan Wilson and Vivian Wilson. The mother's daughter had Dravet syndrome and had 200, 300 seizures a day. So the dad was going out and hounding Christie on the campaign trails, hounding him on the campaign trail. We need to add these conditions. We need to add these conditions. My daughter's suffering, right?
That's when he put his hands in the father's face at the diner.
Yeah.
I told you,
right.
I did. Okay,
but it got enough attention. So I was in the state assembly at the time. And I met with the mom. We're both crying. There's one of those stories where you recognize as a politician, who am I to come between a daughter and a mother and a doctor on how you're going to treat that child? Who am I to do that? So absolutely, the doctor says it's okay. The science is there. Please, please, please add these conditions. So Governor Christie, probably against what he wanted to do, did it because he just had to do it.
Reluctantly.
But it was like the PTSD, adding that condition. It's not something he led that effort. It wasn't his idea. It was a reluctance. But at least he got there a little bit further. And again, similar to the opioid program, but it's that same story over and over again. Cannabis is a gateway to opioids. It's never been proven. I mean, my friend, you know this to be true. We've had an opioid epidemic. We're dealing with it right now. We've had meth epidemics. We've had crack epidemics.
Yes.
The 90s were awful.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So we know these epidemics. Sir, have you ever heard of a cannabis epidemic?
No,
Give me one point in
yes,
time in the history of the United States where we've had a cannabis epidemic. Oh my gosh, cities are destroying themselves because of a cannabis epidemic. The Midwest is going to pot because of the, no pun intended, because of the cannabis epidemic.
Yeah.
It doesn't occur. It's never happened.
Yeah. Or how many people have actually overdosed on cannabis?
Right. So we're talking 150 odd people today. With opioids, we're talking 0 today.
Yes.
0 yesterday and 0 in the entire history.
Yes.
Do you know who publishes that? The Drug Enforcement Agency.
The DEA. Yeah. So it's like, wait a minute. You got one that's saying this and another saying this. Nobody can get it together.
How is it?
And so, once someone asked me, well, first of all, when I remember I had when Governor Christie signed S2345 to have PTSD added to the state's MMP. The day after he did that, I actually had a meeting with him. I actually not meeting, but we saw each other.
On the stairs,
at the State House. Yeah. And I said to him,
famous video.
Thank you. And I told him, I said, sir, you and I may be generals in 2 different armies, but at some point we're going to have to talk. And I got the pen he used to sign the bill with.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's my trophy. That's
cool.
But the thing is that his refusal is indicative of the way Big Pharma would prefer our current leaders to react to certain things. When you talk about cannabis in the state of New Jersey, you're messing with some old money because these pharmaceutical companies have been here for generations. And when you talk about cannabis in New Jersey, you're also messing with some long money because the alcohol industry has been here for generations. And we're seeing the numbers coming back. Hence why you have the NFL pushing back on cannabis when you have this is TBI. This is traumatic brain injury. You have CTE going on. Right. And over every Sunday we see this happening. We even know of some athletes who will tell you, like Marvin Washington, Eugene Monroe,
Leonard
Marshall. These are
Todd Harriman.
People. Todd Harriman, big Todd. Oh God, I'm an Eagles fan. Sorry, Todd, but
look at you, Todd.
Yeah, I love you, Todd. But seriously, at what point? When do we say enough is enough? You know what I think? Come next year. Come yesterday. And next spring, particularly in the state of New Jersey, because now we're through voting and stuff.
I agree. I'm very hopeful with the Murphy victory that we're going to see a legalization occur. But it's like you said, the NFL's pushing back, the NFL Players Association is pushing back even harder, and we're seeing we're seeing ratings, and despite all the kneeling, for the anthem, we've seen the ratings drop over time. So it's not just a recent occurrence; it's been going on over time, and a lot of it has to deal with CTE. And a lot of it has to do with all those issues.
The Will Smith movie.
The Will Smith movie.
Yep.
And so we're seeing less kids get into the junior programs, less kids going to high school programs, going off to college, and so forth. So we're starting to see the effects of this. It's the NFL Players Association. It's groups like, and they're the ones they're out there, representing their members, just like the American Legion's representing their members, right?
Yep.
So we got athletes, we got veterans, we got these groups out there
who are aligned.
And there's a group, a group called Athletes for Care. So Athletes for Care, like we've partnered, New Jersey Cannabisness Association recently partnered with Athletes for Care, and we're doing educational things. We want to make sure the public is aware because, like you said, cannabis, there's all different types of cannabis out there, and it really is coming down to education.
Amen.
Right? So cannabis, there's two main components to cannabis. There's a lot more, but the two main that people talk about are THC, and that gets you high. That's the euphoria that you get. There's also cannabidiol, it's CBD. And CBD is that preventative medicine, and that athletes
the thing that makes you feel good. Yep.
Well, the thing that makes you feel good without the high.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Right, it's
makes
medical.
You feel better, yeah.
Makes you feel better.
Yeah, it's the part that's why we say it's my medicine.
Right. So you have high CBD, low THC, no THC at all, some level of mix, depending upon and the entourage effect, getting that balance in there.
Yes.
And because everybody's going to have something a little bit different. And so you're going to, just like you have multiple types of different medications on the shelf, you have different types of strains that will address different issues. So groups like Athletes for Care are out there, groups like the American Legion are out there, and they're talking about it in a very public way on how individuals. So now you take the athletes, the professional athletes out, and you take the soldiers and the troops out, and now you're just talking about Johnny down the street. You're talking about other people that are having injuries, and it's that education where we get that access, and where access is important. I have a lot of conversations with people who, they share their concerns about, if we legalize cannabis, right? If we legalize cannabis, we're going to have, kids are going to get hooked on drugs, traffic fatalities are going to go through the roof, all these awful things, right? So, I get that a lot, and I can appreciate it as a parent, just as a citizen, right? We don't want more people on the roads, doing bad things and so forth. So, but it's interesting when you have these conversations, the United States Department of Health and Human Services, our federal government, they do a survey every year on addictive substances. So it's not just cannabis or coke or whatever. It's nicotine. It's caffeine. It's also heroin. It is also prescription drugs. It is also cannabis. It is also a whole host of things. And they do a survey every year. We've been doing it for 50 some odd years. They do a survey every year. Did you know we're at a 20-year low?
Yes.
On teenage use?
Yes.
We're at 20-year low. We have never had more legal cannabis in the United States of America. We have 30. We have 30 some odd states that have some form of legal cannabis, medical or adult use, and we're at a 20-year low. We're at a 20-year low. Yeah. We have seen teenage use drop. Not just stay the same, drop in Colorado, drop in Washington. We're seeing this actually happen. And it's because of education. It is because of education that we're going to get through all these things and get people more comfortable with it.
And also it's a public health initiative too.
Absolutely.
Now, I spent every year for about 4 or 5 years, I would go to Amsterdam twice a year. I would make the Cannabis Cup. It's always, matter of fact, it should be going on next week in Amsterdam. And when I talk to the young people there, young people in Amsterdam don't really partake in cannabis. They don't think it's not even counterculture, so what's the point?
It's right there.
And number two, it's just not their thing.
Right.
And I'm like, I remember when I first started figuring this out, talking with people, because you go so many times, you end up making friends. And you just talk to the young people.
It's a friendly place to be.
It is. It's great. It's the first country I've ever been to who got it right. You can consume indoors cannabis, but you can't consume cigarettes.
Right.
That's that. You get a ticket for that.
It's very normal.
Yes. And so, and
most people don't.
No, that's the thing. That's the thing. They don't.
It's legal, but most people don't because it's not for everybody.
And then those that do, it's more of a nightcap. It's more of a. It's more of a nightcap for them, to come down on from a long day's work. Just like when here, traditionally when you get off work, you just take a drink. With that, we're going to take a break, and we'll be back in just a little while.